Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on a really fascinating challenge from one of you, a listener who asked us to go deep, really deep, into some incredibly specialized philosophical texts.
That's right. We're not looking at modern studies today. Our source material is ancient and it's dense. We're focusing on the 100 Dharma categories of Mahayana Buddhism.
And the listener pointed out a really crucial problem with this text. You see the word treatise in some translations, and you expect long explanations.
But it's not that at all. It's actually more like a highly condensed list. The Buddha's disciples compiled it as a set of technical terms, or done too. Think of it like an index of key points meant for memorization.
So the actual teaching was supposed to happen orally, with a master.
Exactly. Without that explanation, you're just left with labels. Greed, anger, arrogance. They're just words on a page, and you don't get the real texture of what they mean or the harm they cause.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to do that foundational work. We're using classical dictionaries, looking at the very structure of the ancient characters to decode these ideas.
We want to find the applied meaning, the kanji and yuli, that's embedded right there in the language itself.
And this really turns it from just philosophy into, practical psychology. We're going to unpack the first 4 of the 6 root afflictions, and I promise you're going to find that they are far more subtle and, frankly, more relevant to your quiet, everyday life than you ever imagined.
And to do that, we have to start where the text starts, with the map of reality itself.
Okay, let's jump in.
So before we can find the afflictions, we need the map. And the 100 Dharma categories gives us that map. It's a framework that classifies literally all phenomena, everything that exists.
Everything. So mental, physical, abstract concepts.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
It's all in there, organized into 5 main categories. It's the complete inventory of our experience.
Okay, so what are they? Lay out the 5 for us.
First is mind dharma, or Tâm Pháp. This is consciousness itself. The 8 types eye consciousness, ear, body, all the way to the deepest storehouse consciousness.
The fundamental awareness.
Got it. Second, mind-associated dharma, Tâm Sở Pháp. These are the 51 mental factors that arise with consciousness. Emotions, states of mind, dispositions.
Okay, so not consciousness, but things that color it.
Exactly. Third is form dharma, or Sắc Pháp. This is the material world. The 5 senses and their objects, color, sound, smell, and so on. 11 types in total.
The physical stuff. Makes sense.
Fourth is a tricky one, non-associated formations. These are concepts that aren't quite mental, not quite physical, but they structure our reality.
Like what? What's an example?
Things like time, space, impermanence, aging, birth, the conditions of existence, 24 of them.
Wow, okay. And the last one?
The 5th is unconditioned dharma, Vô Vi Pháp. These are the 6 types that describe ultimate reality, things that are unproduced, unchanging, like nirvana itself or true reality, Cha Nouveau Vi.
That is an incredibly thorough system. So these afflictions we're talking about, these crippling emotional states, where on that map do they actually live?
They are right there in the 2nd category, the mind-associated dharma. They're not the core consciousness, but they are factors that accompany it and, corrupt it.
And they're specifically called the 6 root afflictions.
That's right. The feel known sao do I, Tham, which is greed, San, anger, Man, arrogance, Vô Minh, ignorance, and then Imi, doubt, and Bachinkin, wrong views.
We're tackling those first 4 today.
But before we can even do that, we have to address a huge philosophical paradox that the text opens with. It's a quote from the Buddha.
Which is?
All phenomena are non-self. Bách Pháp Phân Loại.
Right. Non-self. That's, Buddhism 101. Nothing has a permanent, independent soul or essence.
Exactly. The text explains this concept of vongam, or non-self, is meant to counter our illusion of permanence. It applies to us as individuals and to all phenomena. And the text notes this is primarily the view of the lesser vehicle.
Okay, but this is where the listener got stuck. And frankly, I did too. Because the master then says that our text, which is from the Mahayana school, does not ultimately teach non-self. It teaches ingam, self.
It does. In the context of nirvana, the ultimate state is defined by 4 qualities: permanence, joy, self, and purity. Bung, lak, lang, din.
So wait a minute. How can the ultimate goal be self if the foundational teaching is all phenomena are non-self? That seems like a massive contradiction.
It does, but the resolution is the key to everything. The master explains that the non-self teaching is aimed at the world of changing phenomena. The world described in those first 4 categories on our map, that world is impermanent and lacks a fixed self.
Okay, the relative world. The world of our daily experience.
But the Mahayana view is that all those changing phenomena are actually just temporary expressions of the ultimate reality.
Which is the ultimate self.
Precisely. And they are related through 3 principles. The Mahayana view is that all phenomena are mind-only manifestation, karma-only sensory reaction, and consciousness-only transformation.
Okay, that's a mouthful. Let's break that down.
It means that the world isn't just out there, separate from you. It's a manifestation of mind. It's a reaction shaped by your past karma. And it's a transformation created by your consciousness.
So if everything I experience is generated by my own mind, karma, and consciousness, then in some ultimate sense, it is me. It's all an expression of greater fundamental self.
Exactly. So the non-self teaching is there to help you dismantle the small, separate, temporary ego that thinks it's the center of the universe, the one trapped in those first 4 categories.
But the ultimate goal, nirvana, is to realize that true, permanent, joyful self.
And that puts the afflictions into their proper context. Tam, san, and vomin are the very tools that this small, temporary ego uses to keep itself going, to convince itself it's real and separate.
And in doing so, they blind us to that bigger, ultimate reality.
We are, in a sense, dissecting the machinery of the illusion itself. So let's start with its primary engine. Greed.
Okay, so greed, or tam. When you hear that word, you immediately think of, I don't know, a Scrooge-like character hoarding money or someone just eating way too much.
Right, but the classical sources show us it's a much more fundamental psychological process. It has a clear beginning, a middle, and an end, and that end is always destruction.
So the Thuydvan dictionary gives a very simple definition to start.
It does. Tam is dukkhavate, the desire for objects or things. Simple enough. But the master details the 3-stage process of how this affliction is actually born.
It's a whole lineage, starting with the cause, the Nguyen Hun.
And the cause is actually something quite neutral, exploration. Kampa. Think of a child exploring the world, tasting new food, touching things, listening to words. It's just curiosity. It's how we learn.
But that neutral exploration quickly leads to the second stage.
Curiosity generates desire. Dupvak. I explored that cookie, it tasted good, now I want another one.
And then the third stage is where it becomes a true affliction.
That's right. When that desire becomes persistent, when it starts to override your reason or your peace of mind, when it hardens into this overwhelming, insistent need, that is the final result, the kwa. And that is the affliction of Dom.
So it's not the wanting itself, it's the fixation, the hardening of the mind around that one thing.
And that hardened state defines its true nature, which is always destructive. This brings us to a really foundational quote from the classics, Tam Than Bai Lai.
Greedy people are destructive types, or even they ruin the species. So the core philosophical meaning of tam is destruction, fa, yes.
And the master uses this brilliant analogy of the perfect fruit to explain it. Imagine a beautiful, ripe peach. It's fragrant, it's sweet, it's perfect. In that state, it embodies a kind of goodness.
Okay.
The moment it enters your mouth, the second your desire for it is fulfilled, it is destroyed. It ceases to exist as a perfect fruit.
Wow. So the very act of satisfying the desire is the act of destruction. It's not a side effect, it's the primary effect.
It is the primary effect, and this applies to everything.
Right.
Good resources are destroyed by tham. Good deeds, if you do them because you're greedy for praise, are ruined by tham. The very act of consumption, driven by this affliction, destroys the integrity of the thing being consumed.
The sources even bring up the example of animals versus humans. Animals mate for a purpose, for reproduction. But when humans act out of pure tham, a consuming desire,
it becomes destructive to the self, to the relationship, to the entire situation, because the purpose has been stripped away. It's just consumption for its own sake.
This shows that tham isn't just about getting more stuff. It's a specific mindset that fundamentally ruins whatever it focuses on.
It is. Now let's clarify a related term you often hear, the compound tham-lam, greed, gluttony. What's the difference between tham and lam?
Good question. I've always heard them used together.
The classical distinction comes from the poet Kwa Yuan. I te viet tham, loving money is tham. I tuk viet lam, loving food is lam.
Ah, okay, so tham is more singular. It's focused, it's targeted at one specific thing, that job, that car, that amount of money.
Exactly, it's a very pointed desire. But lam is expansive. It's a pervasive wanting of everything in a category. Food, drinks, entertainment, fun. It's about wanting it all across multiple categories. So when you put them together, tamle.
It means you want everything, the money and all the stuff you can buy with it.
You've got it. It's the difference between being obsessed with getting one specific vintage watch, which would be tam, versus just wanting to buy out the entire luxury store, which is lamb.
That's a really useful distinction. Okay,
Yeah.
So how does this apply in a practical sense, say in leadership?
Mm-hmm.
The sources have a very clear, almost corporate-sounding rule for this.
They do, from the Luki, the rules of propriety. It says, "동근찬치는 국가됨."
Use people of ability, remove their greed.
And the analysis here is so important. A leader, a king, anyone in charge should look for people with ability, people who can get the job done.
Right. But what if someone is incredibly talented and incredibly greedy? Why can't you use them?
Because their greed is an agent of destruction. It is fahai. They might get the project done fast, but in the process, they will burn through the resources, alienate the team, corrupt the process.
And destroy the long-term health of the whole endeavor just for their own short-term gain.
So they are fundamentally unusable. Not because they lack talent, but because the talent is poisoned by the destructive nature of them. It's a built-in security risk.
So from a functional perspective, TAM is a psychological state that literally makes talent toxic.
That's the perfect way to put it. So if TAM is that slow, creeping, destructive fixation, then SAN, or anger, is its opposite in many ways. It's a sudden, mighty explosion.
The definition in the Next Ryan dictionary is tinki, mighty energy or force. It sounds almost like a physical event.
It is. The master points out that when this force erupts, you can't contain it silently. Sound is almost always produced. It's an energetic release.
And the ancient scribes even used substitute characters. San can also be read as sin, to be born, which suggests it's not a constant state. It's something that is suddenly born in a moment.
Yes, it erupts. It doesn't grow slowly like man. And it almost always erupts when your existing greed, your tem, has been violated or threatened in some way.
Okay, but the most important philosophical point here, the one that really challenges how you probably think about your own anger, is the phrase bantak sansen.
Self-generated anger.
Self-generated. That's a paradigm shift. Because when I'm angry, I am 100% convinced that I have a good reason. The other person was wrong. The situation was unfair.
And this is where the teaching says we are fundamentally mistaken. Anger is described as a disease, a bunsen, that exists within the self. The external person or event is not the cause.
Okay, I have to push back on that for the listener. If I'm driving and someone cuts me off and I have to slam on the brakes, the rage I feel seems completely justified and caused by them. How can that be an internal disease?
The bad driver is only the condition, the duyenkui. They are the match. But if you didn't have a pile of gunpowder sitting inside you, no match in the world could cause an explosion.
So the size of my angry reaction is actually a measure of how sick I am internally, not a measure of how bad the other person's action was.
Exactly. The proof for this is the story of the Buddha in a past life as the patient's immortal. King Kaului, in a rage, systematically mutilated his body, cutting off his limbs.
And the immortal felt no anger.
No anger at all, only compassion, because he was not sick. Nyutakomon. The king provided the most extreme external condition imaginable, but there was no internal gunpowder to ignite.
So when I feel that flash of rage because someone was rude in an email, that's my internal sickness flaring up.
It's the disease revealing itself. It forces you to stop judging the trigger and start treating the illness. This is why when two people are arguing, the source would say they are both just demonstrating the severity of their own bantak san.
It completely shifts the focus inward. We have to realize these are learned habits, Hokmakoba. We learn to be this way.
And we can unlearn it. The only way to become healthy, to be vobunk, is to cure the disease, bantlanri.
Now let's quickly distinguish san from a related word, no, or wrath.
Right. San is the essence, the banshad. It's that explosive internal sickness. No is the external image, the hin-en bangwai. It's the visible manifestation, the shouting, the red face, the clenched fists.
San is the engine, no is the smoke.
A perfect analogy. And the anecdote about the sixth patriarch, Lukto, really shows the gulf between the sick and the healthy mind.
Yeah.
He was living among hunters who were constantly threatening him.
And instead of getting angry or defensive, he would call them my good friends.
A mind afflicted with san would immediately jump to self-preservation, wanting to, as the disciple said, destroy everyone. But Lutto's mind was so healthy, so free of the disease that even malice couldn't trigger a reaction.
The takeaway is just so profound. Every single time you feel anger, You're not seeing the world clearly. You're experiencing a symptom of your own disease.
All right, now we move to man, arrogance or pride. And if tam is consumption and san is eruption, man is something much more insidious. It's a slow, quiet degradation.
The Thutavan defines it as laikta, degradation or falling. And we need to be clear, this isn't just about laziness. This is alike falling into lower, more painful states of being.
The very act of feeling superior is the act of falling. You might feel like you're elevating yourself, but in reality, you are degrading yourself in that very moment.
And unlike anger, it doesn't just explode out of nowhere. The master uses this amazing metaphor of a climbing vine, a deilio.
Yes, it grows slowly, almost invisibly. It weaves itself into your imagination, your deep-funk tomb. The arrogant person is constantly running a story in their head about how they're better, smarter, more justified.
It's this continuous internal monologue of self-aggrandizement.
Always weaving upward, never downward. And this internal story is incredibly pervasive. Another definition for man is trungup overflowing.
Like a flood, unkunux. So it's not just one arrogant thought. It's a mindset that colors absolutely everything.
It does. And this leads to the most critical and, I think, most challenging insight about man. Another definition connects it to laziness or sloth. I done.
Wait, how does arrogance connect to being lazy? They seem like opposites. An arrogant person is often a driver, a go-getter.
But if you are truly diligent, tintan, constantly working on yourself, correcting your faults, you have no time or energy for man. The laziness here is a form of indulgence, feng tu dan.
So what does that mean in practice?
It means that being lenient with yourself is man, quan dong viming.
Wow. Okay, unpack that. That is a huge statement.
The master gives a simple example. You see a colleague make a mistake, spill a coffee on a report. You think, how careless, how unprofessional. You are critical. But when you do the exact same thing, your internal monologue is completely different. Oh, I was just so busy, I didn't mean to. It's not a big deal.
That self-forgiveness, that little exception you grant yourself.
That is the very fabric of man. It's the belief that the rules of discipline, of conduct, of diligence apply just a little bit less strictly to you. Because you are special, you deserve the break.
So every time I let myself off the hook, every time I make an excuse for not sticking to my diet or my workout or my meditation.
You are actively weaving the vine of man. You are practicing degradation. It's built on thousands of these tiny, seemingly harmless acts of self-leniency.
That is deeply unsettling. It means man isn't just for narcissists. It's something we are all practicing constantly every single day.
And this leads to the final and perhaps most shocking definition. Man as command. Meant.
This comes from the text.
Yes. Kuni batnang tiungda, which means doing the work but being unable to precede the command. Ma is when you're great at giving the order, man, but you don't actually have the capacity cut to do the work yourself.
And the master takes this to its logical, radical conclusion.
He does. He says that any request you make of another person, no matter how polite, is an act of men.
Any request, even, hey, could you please pass me that cup?
Yes, because underlying that polite request is a psychological assumption that you are entitled to direct another person's energy and time for your own convenience. That sense of entitlement comes directly from men.
So how do you even function in a society?
You function by minimizing those requests, by maximizing your own self-reliance. You only ask for what is absolutely essential and only what you're fully prepared to do yourself.
The anecdote about Mao during the Long March illustrates this perfectly.
It does. When the troops covering the retreat were late, Mao refused to eat. He stood outside the village and waited, subjecting himself to the exact same conditions as his lowest-ranking soldiers.
In that moment, he refused to use his status, his command, for personal comfort.
In that moment, he had no man. Of course, the source notes that later in life, flattery and power corrupted him, which just shows how vigilant you have to be. The vine of man is always ready to start growing again. All right, we now arrive at the fourth affliction, vomin, or ignorance. And if man is subtle degradation, vomin is like a total, comprehensive blindness.
And the key here is that it's not just not knowing something. It's actively knowing incorrectly. The classical characters for this are so revealing.
They really are. Let's start with one of the ancient characters used for vavam. The dictionary defines it as mukvomin dai, eyes without brightness. Or, even more graphically, mautu ko hamdar, the pupil is dried out and sunken.
So it's a metaphor for impaired vision. You're looking, but you're not seeing clearly.
Exactly. And it implies your very senses are acting like an enemy, an oaman. Your eyes and ears are constantly pulling you toward things that reinforce your biases and bad habits, making you misunderstand reality and act against your own best interests.
And there's another meaning for on, right? The dry well.
Yes. Tanho futoi dekvi chai owen. A dry well without water is also called owen. This is a powerful metaphor for our modern condition.
The body and mind are the well, and we are spiritually and mentally dried up. Jungko.
We are, and what do you do with the dry well? Instead of nurturing it, trying to find a new spring, people just dump trash in it. Owan Rauval Junko.
That's a perfect description of doom scrolling.
Yeah.
We're mentally exhausted, so we just dump endless, useless information from social media into our dried up minds.
The cure, then, is true care, yuki. And that means using the senses and the body less, dongit, allowing the well to replenish. The opposite of what our culture of Vomin tells us to do, which is to be constantly consuming information.
Okay, what about the next character? Lao, Owen.
Yeah.
This one is about self-sabotage.
It is. The definition is incredible. Nutu baktel tuntum batanguda. Fish eggs that get stuck on the grass are harmed and cannot become fish.
They are out of their element. They have potential, but it can't be realized.
This is the definition of Vomin in action. Consumption without cultivation. Q hamakum tubu. You are constantly spending the small amount of merit or energy you have without ever doing the work to generate new virtue.
You're spending down your account without ever making a deposit, so eventually you're just bankrupt.
And you achieve nothing. Tangtan tugi. The master links this directly to modern physical habits, especially our overconsumption of oil, salt, and sugar.
How does that connect?
He says that this kind of overconsumption literally eats away at the brain nerves. No. It causes brain fog, it impairs your cognition.
So Vomin is manifesting physically. It's destroying your ability to think clearly.
And worse, it destroys your body's internal signal of satiety. You literally don't know when you're full anymore. This leads to a state of constant restless consumption, barakakukui. You can't rest, you can't return to balance, you are stuck in the cycle of low.
Wow. Okay, but the most critical, most philosophical definition of Vomin comes from the character Chung, which means verification or proof.
This is the hardest conceptual leap for people. How can ignorance be an act of proving something?
Right. It seems totally contradictory.
It's because Vomin is an active process. You take your own limited, personal, biased, past experience, and you use it as the ultimate tool to judge and confirm the rightness or wrongness of everyone else.
So I take my little internal rulebook, which is based on my flawed life, and I apply it as universal law to you.
Precisely. The classic story for this is the axe thief anecdote. A man loses his axe and suspects his neighbor stole it.
Okay.
Immediately, Vomin kicks in and starts verifying the suspicion. The way the neighbor walks, shifty, like a thief. The way he talks, evasive, definitely a thief. Every single thing the neighbor does becomes irrefutable proof.
Because he's looking through the filter of his initial suspicion.
The filter of Vomin. Then later, he finds his axe. He had just misplaced it. And suddenly, he looks at his neighbor again, and the neighbor's walk is just a walk. His speech is just speech. Nothing about the neighbor changed. Only the lens of Vomin was removed.
So every time we judge someone based on our own past, thinking, oh, I know what they're up to because I've seen this before, we are practicing Vomin.
And it is guaranteed to be wrong because your experience is finite and flawed. And this flawed verification inevitably leads to creating huge negative karma for yourself. You wrongfully accuse people, you harm them, you slander them, all because you were so sure you were right.
Which leads to the final chilling conclusion about goodness.
Goodness attached to the sign of ignorance is not trustworthy. If your mind is a dry well, constantly spending itself down and actively proving falsehoods, how can any of your good deeds be reliable? You're just as likely to cause harm as you are to help.
Okay, so we've just been through a deep diagnosis of these four huge psychological traps. Tem is destruction, Sun is a disease, Mon is degradation, and Vomin is this act is flawed verification. So the natural question is, what do we do? What are the consequences of just going on speaking and acting while we're contaminated by all this?
Well, the master is very clear. Any communication you engage in while you're afflicted is basically pointless busy work. You're just wasting your energy trying to prove your own flawed, limited point of view.
And the karmic results of that are absolute.
They are. Every thought, word, and deed your thenkogen yip will verify on yourself. It's a perfect boomerang. Whatever you put out comes right back to you.
The story of the lotus-colored woman is such a terrifying example of this.
It's a perfect illustration of verification through speech. Her whole tragic life, all of her misfortunes, were a direct, literal fulfillment of the words she used to speak to others, advising them to indulge and seize every pleasure.
So her destiny became a mirror of her own careless speech.
Exactly. Which means our primary goal in communication has to be the creation of good karma, because whatever we say, good or bad, is literally the blueprint for our own future reality.
So we have to have a filter, a standard for what counts as speech that's even worth speaking.
And we do. The source gives us the Tubyantai, the 4 eloquences, from the Great Accumulation Sutra. This is the ultimate communication checklist. If your speech doesn't pass all 4 of these tests, it's better to remain silent.
Okay, let's go through them. What's the first one?
Criterion 1. Your speech must correspond to benefit, luish, not non-benefit, fe luish.
And most of our daily conversation is non-benefit, isn't it? Talking about the weather, sports, gossip. It doesn't really benefit anyone in a lasting way.
It's just filling the air. Beneficial speech has to serve a true, meaningful purpose for the other person's well-being.
Okay, what's the second criterion?
Criterion 2. It must correspond to dharma, chonfap, not non-dharma, fifap. This means it has to align with timeless truth and morality.
So if you're just repeating a popular but biased opinion or getting caught up in some temporary cultural argument, that's fifap. It's not grounded in truth.
Precisely. Criterion 3. It must correspond to extinguishing affliction, dit tun fien known, not increasing affliction, tung trung fien no.
This one feels huge for arguments. Our instinct is to win the point, to prove we're right, which just inflames everyone's anger and arrogance. It increases affliction.
Whereas speech that meets this standard is aimed at soothing, at clarifying, at actually reducing the suffering in the conversation, even if it's a difficult truth.
And the fourth and final standard.
Criterion 4. It must correspond to nirvana merit, conduct nibbana, not transmigratory defilement, qualo sinktu. This is the highest bar.
So does your speech point toward liberation, toward peace, toward that ultimate self we talked about at the beginning? Or is it just dragging everyone deeper into the cycle of confusion and suffering?
And the final warning from the master is absolute. Any speech that is mixed with your own personal afflictions, your pride, your anger, your flawed way of verifying things, is considered makwala.
Devil speech.
Devil's speech. It cannot qualify as one of the 4 eloquences.
And it is so easy to fall into that trap because we're constantly using our own ego as the yardstick for what's true and helpful.
Yeah.
We have to consciously apply these filters before we even open our mouths.
We have to learn to only speak the words we are truly qualified to speak. Otherwise, we are just constantly harming ourselves and others with our own communication.
This has been an incredible deep dive. It's completely reframed how I think about these very common words. To summarize for everyone, we learned that tam, greed, isn't just wanting things. It's a mindset of destruction. It's a consuming force that ruins the integrity of whatever it touches.
And san, anger, is not a justified response to the world. It is a self-generated disease. The person or event that angers you is merely the trigger, revealing the sickness that was already inside you.
Then there's manan, arrogance, which is this slow, quiet degradation. And we find it in the most surprising place in our own self-leniency.
Yeah.
Every little excuse we make for ourselves is an act of man, an act of falling.
And finally, vomin, ignorance, is not a passive lack of knowledge. It is an active, flawed verification. It is the toxic habit of using our own tiny, biased past to judge others, which is guaranteed to be wrong and create immense suffering for ourselves down the line.
And if we don't study these things, if we don't become meticulous observers of our own minds, then every action we take, every word we speak, is just contaminated by this destructive brew of mon and vomin.
The path forward, the master says, is to practice kantilthan via cautious meticulousness in every single thought, word, and action. We have to completely eliminate that self-leniency.
So here is your final thought to take with you from this deep dive. Ask yourself right now, what small, self-indulgent habit, that little exception you made for yourself today, that tiny act of laxity you just brushed off, might you now realize is actually a massive, slow-growing affliction, patiently weaving the vine of your own degradation?
That is the work.
That's your thought to explore until we meet again on the deep dive.